So I kick off with this very simple example of reserve Tempi. It's white to play. Pause the video if you want to have a go at working out what you'd do as white. It's fairly clear what needs doing here because it looks like white's in trouble because black's winning this pawn. Black's then got an outside pass pawn which they can use to push, bring white's king over here, and off the black king goes over there to win all those pawns. But white can draw this by playing f5, which gives him two reserve Tempi over here, which are going to need to be used. We need to check whether black playing h5 at some point would mean it's still two reserve Tempi, because that could mess it up. It is still two reserve Tempi, we'll look at that. But it is two reserve Tempi, so when black takes this pawn, white just comes and traps the black king in. You can see there's no way for the black king to get out. White's got the opposition. The only way that black can progress is to play a4, and now white can't move their king, or the black king's out, and it is outside pass pawns, just a complete win. So this is where white needs to use one of their reserve Tempi, and again, now white's got the opposition. You can see the black king's getting nowhere unless we push the pawn, and then we use our other one. And the black king can't do anything except for pushing the pawn, and then well, actually that would be a disaster there for black thinking about it, because it's not stalemate, because black would then have to push that pawn and lose the game. So the only other thing to check is the thing I talked about at the start. Can black mess up you having the two reserve Tempi by playing h5? And the answer is no. So after messing around with the king, you might play a4. Now you play h4. That's one of your reserve Tempi. And again, lots of messing about with the kings, but eventually black's going to have to play a3. And here's your other one. h6 takes h5. So nice try by black playing h5, but we end up in the same position. This time black can safely play a2 because it's going to be a stalemate. So that's what reserve Tempi are. Fairly simple example. Try this one. This is a game from 1968. Dvoretsky himself is black. See if you can work out what the next move should be. So he plays g4, which gives him this reserve tempo over here, h5, and it actually won in the game. What happened was that white sealed the move king c3, and then didn't bother carrying on the game because they sort of went away and looked at it and realised it was lost. It would be won with fairly simply king e6, the white king come into d4, we take the opposition and force the king back. White gets the opposition, but then there it is, there's your reserve tempo, and black would win the game. So king c3 was a losing move. It's also worth checking, instead of king d4, whether white could try something like king b3, but not really. That's just clearly lost as well. I don't even think we need to worry about reserve Tempi there, do we? It was in the other line where we did. Yeah, so white sealed this king c3 move and lost because of the didn't bother carrying on, because went away and looked at it, and it was a fairly easy win for black from there. Interestingly, there was a draw. It's quite a clever draw. He should have sealed king e3, and then the game would maybe continue king e6. And white's only got one drawing move here, and it's the astonishing h3. It's got to be played now. h3 takes, and then king f2. If you try it the other way around, it doesn't work. I'll come back to that in a sec. So let's say black plays king d5, then you go king g1. Black has to play h5 there, by the way, because if he just leaps, once they've left the fourth rank, you've got g4. So I think king b3, black might even end up losing that actually. Yeah, that's g4 wins for white there. So they have to play h5, takes, and this is a draw. Really clever, that h3 move. I mean, black's got an extra pawn there, so we could get bogged down in the details of that particular queen ending. But it is a draw. Um, so yeah, king e3, and then the brilliant h3 takes king f2. Black's got a different winning try here, probably a better winning try. Rather than king d5, which we've just seen, they can play king f6. And the idea is that after king g1, they'll play this sneaky king g7. So that if white comes into h2 straight away with the king, black's now winning again. King g6 takes king h5. I mean, what does white do? They're in a big mess. They might think they've got this clever g4 check move. That pawn can't be taken, obviously. Well, it can, but you just throw away the win. But black just plays king g6. And again, we've got the outside passed pawn that's going to win black the game. So that was black's better winning try. King f6, king g1, king g7. And after the rash king h2, we'd see king g6, isn't it? But white doesn't play king h2. White plays king h1. And then when the black king comes into king g6, then plays king h2. So, you know, quite a lot for white to see, to be honest. You know, because I mean, obviously, if king h5, then we take on h3. And it's black that has to move backwards rather than white to move in this position. And we were forced into that g4, which was sort of the only option. What else needs to be said about this position? So g4, Dvoretsky went on to win. King e3, and yeah, it's just so important to play h3 now rather than king f2 on this move. It's also worth looking at h4. h4 loses because of king d5, threatening king c4, king d3, and then there's your reserve tempo again. All afforded to black because of this g4 earlier on. So h4 loses. And instead of h3 and then king f2, you think, well, I'll just play king f2 and then h3. But this time black comes into d5, h3, and this time you don't take it, you play h5. Taking it, I think, would transpose. Yeah, taking it would be a draw. And the white king just can't get back. The black king's getting into c4. I mean, that position was rich, wasn't it? There was a lot in there. Right, this next one is an absolute classic, which I've failed to get right on a number of occasions. I think I finally understand it, and I hope I've got something out of continually looking at it each time I come back to it. Getting it wrong every time. Yeah, pause the video and decide what you'd do here as white. The first thing to note is that if you sort of just make a run through the middle, you know, king e2, king d7, let's say you try and just sort of come up this way. You know, I'll play king e3. I mean, black can seize the opposition here with king e7. But just to show you how pointless it is trying to come up the king side straight away or through the centre straight away, black can even just give you the opposition. And it just doesn't do anything. Because you can't come into d5. It's just, you know, even if you use your 2 reserve tempi, which is what this is all about, black just doesn't care. Black doesn't care if they've got the opposition or not got it. They can just go back and forth there. So opposition on the 4th and 6th rank here isn't going to help white. So we need a completely different plan. And the plan is we're going to try and make our way to a5. Because if we get to the a6 square or the b6 square, we've completely won. If black comes to try and stop us getting through on the queen side, then we're going to win. We'll see that in a sec. But we've got 2 reserve tempi over here. So the plan is to get to a5, use one of these reserve tempi to force black's king to the unfavourable a7 square. Make our way back round to the king side. This time it'll be opposition on the 5th and the 7th rank rather than the 4th and the 6th. This time it is a bit more useful to white, and then use the reserve tempo. That's the plan. An incredible winning plan. And even if you sort of don't get it, or even don't, like me, don't understand it very well after 3 or 4 times of going through it, hopefully it's still useful for understanding reserve tempi, really. Just this idea of storing up pawn moves that you've got. And I mean, here it's irrelevant, but if your opponent's got spare pawn moves, you want to try and get rid of them, I suppose. Anyway, so king e2, king d7. First of all, it's worth checking what happens if black does come down the queen side and tries to sort of block you going that way. We can just play b4, king b5, king c3. That black king goes back, king c4. And once we force the black king back to a7, then it's just over. There you go. I mean, that would be a win for white, even if we didn't have the b4 pawn, which, I don't know, would black now take the b4 pawn? It's irrelevant, isn't it? That's a win for white. So it doesn't really make any sense for black to try and come and meet you on the queen side. So black's just going to get ready to, I don't know, come and meet your attempt to come through the middle, as we've just seen earlier on. Just come to the 6th rank, you're on the 4th rank, and the opposition's meaningless. But remember, we're going to make a run for the queen side. But it's important to get the move order right. The c4 and the e6 squares are mined. So if black goes to e6 straight away, it makes white's job that little bit easier. If they step on the mined square, white will step on the corresponding, I guess, no longer mined square. So black tries to be sneaky with king e7, and white says, right, well, I'm not going to the mined square. It's worth checking what happens if white does go to that mined square, just to see what is mined from white's point of view. Black plays king e6. If we go king b4, king d5, I think that's just over, isn't it? That's trivially drawn. The c5 pawn's about to drop. And if white comes back to d4, black can just play f6. Obviously going to c4 is going around in circles. I think we've got a corresponding square situation going on here. We have, haven't we? So king c3, king e5. Yeah, so I think, I mean, they're the corresponding mined squares. Black's just stepped to e5 because white's on c3. They're the corresponding squares, basically. And there's nothing that white can do. Remember, they can't go to, I don't think they can go to the b file at all, actually. As soon as they step to the b file, their c pawn's gone. So that would just be a draw. So we don't go to c4. We go to c3. Clever. Then black comes to e6, and then we can go to c4. Now, what happens if black tries king e5 in this position? Let's just look at that move there. What would happen here is that white can play b4. The black king's kind of stepped too far down the board, and now they can't get back in time, basically. So now we can play b4. Black desperately tries to get back in time, but white's going to get to the b6 square. Okay, so they can't come forward to e5. They'd have to go to, back to d7, I suppose. And now we're going to get to the a5 square. Black's obviously going to stop us getting to either of these two key squares, where it's just completely winning for white. If we now make a run back for the king side, it just doesn't achieve anything. We're going to get met in the same way as we showed earlier on. So this is where white uses their first reserve tempo, b3. Black has to stop you coming to a6 and b6, so king a7 is forced, but now you've stuck black's king one square away from being able to meet us favourably on the king side. We're now going to be able to get to the 5th rank on the king side. That was the crucial bit. So you make a run back to the king side, black takes the opposition, and bosh, there comes your second reserve tempo. Win for white. I mean, it's an absolutely brilliant position. It's a study by Grigoriev. hence it being mental from 1931. I've seen it in different endgame books. Like I say, I've got it wrong a lot. Hopefully, I mean, I'd like to say next time I get it right, but I've seen it so many times now. I've almost just memorised it, and yeah, you don't really know if you're learning anything in chess when it gets to the point where you've seen studies so many times that you've memorised them. But I don't know. Hopefully I am. Hopefully there's a transferable skill in there somewhere, and hopefully you like that study. Right, next one. This one's from a 1995 game. So, you look around for reserve tempi. This is all about storing up your pawn moves. We've got this one, we've got this one, we've got this one, we've got this one. Steinitz's rule, by the way, is never move pawns on their starting square, just as a general rule of thumb, because it takes away your choice to either move one or two later. If you end up in like a zugzwang mine square situation, it might be that you want to move that pawn one, or it might be you want to move that pawn two. But white's got quite a few. Black's got a couple of kingside pawns that she can hopefully use at some point. Now the game actually went a4, and Dvoretsky sort of criticises this a lot, saying white just unnecessarily chucks away one of her spare, one of her reserve tempi. I think I know why she played the move, just from the point of view of, I mean, I might have this completely wrong. Both the players in this game, by the way, are rated far higher than I'll ever be, so I don't want to make presumptions on her behalf. But I think she was worried that if she didn't take that reserve tempo, her opponent would. But we'll see in a minute that if black plays a4, it's just a mistake, and white can go and win that pawn. So white could have kept this a4 move in her pocket and just done something else. But yeah, the game went a4, and black just sensibly moved her king back, back to d7. We're not going to allow king to d, some opposition here. King d4, king d6, and yeah, black can just sort of hold this basically now. White tried to mess around a bit, and black said, "I'm having none of it." And then, yeah, white pushed the f pawn. That's one of the reserve tempi gone. I don't know why she didn't actually just, in that position, surely you'd play king d4, king d6, and then at least push the f pawn there. I mean, it's still a draw, but you're sort of handing an extra reserve tempo to away there, just sort of chucking it away. Anyway, king d4, king d6, king c4. They just messed around a bit, and then just agreed a draw, basically, because there was just no way to make progress on the king side. There was no way to make black run out of moves. But the game is won with king c3. So first of all, let's look at the move that white was probably worried about when she just senselessly, according to Dvoretsky, wasted one of her reserve tempi. I think she was probably worried about this a4 move. But there, if I'm right about that, there was no need to be. King back to d3, d6, king e6, king b4, and we can just sensibly grab that a pawn. If king takes d4, that's clearly won. And if black tries to be clever with king c4, we can still just push the d pawn, and it's won. The a pawn's coming through. That's just one. So black can't play a4. There was no need to be worried about that. If that's what she was worried about, we could have kept this. She could have kept that move in her pocket. If black comes in with king e4, it's also over. White would step up the board with king c4 and then king d5. That's also just completely gone. And if black plays king e6, just stepping back, then we're going to see similar to the game, but now white's got this a4 move. And let's just look at the way it sort of should have played out on the king side, bearing in mind that white's got an extra move now, because white's just played a4 and forcing black to play the first move. So h6, h3, g6, h4, h5, and f3. And what else could black try? So they could try g5 there, and then you would play f3, And even though black's got f4, your king's then got the e4 square. So it was just one. Just don't waste that reserve tempo at the start. Easy to say in hindsight, obviously. Right, this is a game from 1996. White to play. Pause the video and decide how you'd go about winning it. Once you realise it's in the section on reserve tempi, it's sort of pretty obvious what you need to do. Even if it's not the right answer, you can see how you can get yourself a reserve tempo. The game actually went, and the guy playing white here was rated 2,610. So we're talking a strong player, surely. I mean, that's sort of the strong end of the Grandmasters, isn't it? Or certainly in the middle of the Grandmasters. Anyway, he threw the win away with this. G takes f5, king to e2, h5, and they just agreed to draw. There was just nothing to be done there. Possibly he first, I don't know, looked into g5 and decided that it didn't do anything, but it does do rather a lot. You've got this reserve tempo, which is going to win you the game. And what you're going to do, I mean, you're going to come and collect the d pawn quite happily. That's not a problem. By the way, we can see what happens if black makes a run for the d5 square. So king f7, king e2. Let's see what happens if black makes a run for the d5 square, king d3, and comes into d5. Then you play e6. Black has to take it, and then you go king takes d4. Now it's that position that we're actually going for. If black just lets you take the d pawn, we'll see that what you're trying to achieve is that position with black to move. So you'll take the d pawn, and at some point in a minute, you're going to push the e pawn anyway and get this position with black to move. So yeah, not that move. g5, king f7. Black can't make a run for the d pawn. I mean, I suppose they could still play king e6 and then do a bit of messing about. But let's look at king e7, and then we're going to come in, take the d pawn. King back to d7, e7. It doesn't matter, I suppose, because what we don't want to do now is play e6. That would throw away the win, because what we want is, I mean, if we played e6 here, black would take it, and that's the position we want, but with black to move, not with white to move. So we just sort of come back and mess about a bit. King c3, king d3, king back to d7, and now we can play it. e6 check. If black realises, well, let's just say for now that we can assume that position's won, just sort of trust me on that for now, and they realise it and try king e7, then you can go king c4. They have no way to stop you getting that position with them to move. That's the point. And now they can't do anything. They have to take the pawn, because if they move the king back, which is their only option, if they don't take the pawn, then you're going to get to e5 and defend your e6 pawn. So black now has to take, and then this is the position that you're always looking for with black to move. Black goes back, you come into e5. Aha! I've got the opposition. It's like, aha, don't forget, I've got the reserve tempo that I created right at the start with that g5 move. So that little extra move in his pocket would have won him the game. If we go back to the start, play g5 again. I don't think there's anything else to say. We could see, so king f7 might try. There's just nothing to say as there, king g7. I mean, I'm just looking at king e2 still wins the game, but even simpler if they played king g7. I'm just wondering whether they've got some sort of trick with the h-pawn, actually. If you go king e2. Yeah, so to save worrying about that h-pawn move, what you could do is just play e6 straight away. And yeah, black's got to deal with that. They definitely can't push the h-pawn now, because you'll just take it, and these two pawns are going to promote without the help of the king, because the floating square goes beyond the back rank. King f8. King e2, king e7, king d3. I think we've more or less transposed. We've transposed in terms of the situation. Black now either has to take that pawn and get into the position that we already know is won, or leave that pawn alone, and now the white king into e5 to defend their e6 pawn. So that was the simplest way of winning against king g7. Although just glancing at the engine, king e2 also wins. Probably don't want to get too sidetracked in the middle of this. Reserve Tempi video, but yeah, if black tries that h5 trick, we can still just take on h6 and come through the middle, I suppose. So we still do need a bit of messing about with the king there. So yeah, let's. I mean, I presume this is your reserve tempo still. So in fact, it looks like it's the same, doesn't it? I go king c4. If king e6, I'm saying king back to d4 now. Oh, we're into sort of engine messing around where it's allowing repetition of moves because the win's happening in a different way later on. Let's just forget all that. Apparently that is winning somehow, but we don't need to worry about it because we've already shown that e6 is a win. Right, next position. This is a study by a guy called Post. I'm sure I pronounced that very badly, but his name's spelt Post in English phonetics. And it's from 1941. White to play. Pause the video. Decide what you'll do. At first, it's very hard to see how reserve tempi have got anything to do with this position. But it's black's reserve tempo there, b6, that's going to be the important point. I mean, that's a subtlety that, you know, because sometimes these puzzles in these studies in the Dvoretsky book, you can sort of get a bit sidetracked by trying to fit in the move with the theme rather than actually just playing chess. So your best thing to do is just to play it as if it's a game of chess, and then later on you're like, oh, okay, that's why it's in that section, or you get nowhere near finding out why it's in that section, and then you'll see something that's wrong with what you looked at. Anyway, there's a breakthrough threatened here. Black's threatening to break through with b5, so white needs to get in the square basically of the. I've just realised, sorry. I've set up the position wrongly from the start. Okay, so I ruined the first move. This was the original position. White needs to get in the square of the c pawn because there's a breakthrough threatened over here with b5. So if we tried, I don't know, king g4. Let's just try king g4. And we already know, sorry, because I messed up the video, that the first move's king g5. So sorry about that if you pause the video. But let's just go for it anyway, because I'm not re-recording the first 25 minutes. King g4, and let's see what happens. So we're now in the square of this c pawn, which we needed to get in. Black can just come over with a king. It's like, okay, we'll push the f pawn, and black will still come over with a king. We can now push the f pawn again. King e6, king g5, king f7. We can come to f5, and here it is. Like if black plays d5 here, then we can just take it, and we'll have these two pawns, which I think I'm right in thinking they're actually even going to promote without the help of their king. But black's got this clever b6 move, crucial reserve tempo. You think, well, that's not a problem. I'll just slide my king to g5. Black can't come in this way because I'll go here and my f pawn's promoting. And it's the same thing. When he pushes d5, I'll play c takes d5, and these two pawns are going to promote without the help of their king because their floating square has reached the back rank. And it's true; those two pawns do promote without the help of their king. But just take a glance at black's promotion square, and we've just put our king on g5. That's why b6 was absolutely crucial. And I'm pretty sure the study was set up to revolve around that entire point. Here we go. d8 equals queen, c1 equals queen, check. Oh dear. And that's going to be a draw. So king g4 doesn't work. You have to play king g5, which still gets in the square of this c pawn if black does the breakthrough move b5, but in the same variation as before, we now if you go king b8, that's now our king is now one step further up the board, so that's pretty important. The black king now just can't stop that pawn. If black played after king g5, just sort of played a waiting move like b6 just to get their king across, because they've still got the breakthrough going on. Then we play king g4. Okay. King takes g6 doesn't do it because black's still got this breakthrough. But b5 is actually slightly better for black, the engine reckons there. But we go king back to g4. And then we see all the same sort of stuff as before. But now black can't force your king to g5. I mean, it's just crackers, isn't it? How people... Does anyone actually get this stuff? I mean, I didn't get this. But I'm hoping that when you go through the solutions, we're still learning something. There's some sort of transferable skill going on. See, that's now not check. Instead, it's checkmate to white. So yeah, you play your king g5. So the crucial point about it is that if black plays b6, they've already spent their reserve tempo. And if they try and bring their king round, your king's actually one square further up to supporting the promotion of this f pawn anyway. I think it's a similar story of king b6. If king b6, I mean, you can actually take the g pawn as well here. But you can play f4. I don't know if black plays king c7. Oh, you can still take the g pawn, but this is simpler. As you can see, I don't know if the black king tries to come over. Can we play king g6? I reached out for the king there, but f6 apparently is even better. Oh, no, it changed its mind. Oh, it's now got both of them at like plus 35. So the engine's evaluating it, but this is clearly just one for white. And finally, a bit of a bonkers move, but I'm not sure. I suppose, yeah, black could try king a6, but they're just sort of playing a move to keep this hope alive. And I guess if you go king g4 here, would you mess it up with king g4 because of the same sort of thing? I think you might. Yeah, you do mess it up. Would end up transposing to the first variation. I mean, I don't know why you'd think to play king g4 there, but you've got so many winning moves. That being one of them. Okay, yeah, I mean, we're even in the square of the c pawn there, aren't we? So we've got a protected pass pawn here and a pass pawn here. And this is, yeah, it's just completely, oh, don't know what I've done there. Completely won. So how about that? King g4, not good enough, because about 5 moves later, black can play this reserve tempo to force your king to g5. King g5 is the winner to still get in the square of the c pawn, but only because when black wastes their reserve tempo, then you play king g4. I mean, it's just crackers, isn't it? Right, this one is black to play. Pause the video and decide what you'll do. So this one is incredibly hard to sort of get everything from the start. It's worth just sort of quickly looking at something simple like king b6 first of all, just to see what happens. So yeah, king b6, white would step into c4, would see a5, a4, both sides just sort of spending their reserve tempi, and now black's in big trouble unless they play h6. Obviously the c5 pawn and the game is going to fall, so black has to play their reserve tempo move h6. If white pushes the d pawn, then king c6, d7, king takes d7, king takes c5. And black's still got a winning try here because they've got this h5 threat on the outside. So black can make their way over to the king side. King e7, king d5, king f7. Now white has to be careful here. If white doesn't come to the e file, h5 is going to win because white's not going to be able to stop. If they just sort of play king d4 or something, white's not going to be able to stop. I mean, certainly they can't go to the 6th rank because then black can just leave their king on f7 and push this pawn. So white's only sort of drawing move here, but it does draw, is king e4. Because now the point is that if you play h5, takes king g7, king f3, and we've got a mine square situation. Okay, so black doesn't play h5. Black plays a sneaky king f8, and the white king has to stay ready to come and sort out the h5 threat. They can't go back to the d file, so they've got to play king f3 or king e3. So this king f8 move is sneaky because it wrestles the opposition off white. So white plays king f3, king back to e7, and yeah, I mean black could, well, sorry, white, if white plays king e or king e3 is actually also okay, thinking about it here, because they can get the opposition after king d6. But we were trying to engineer that position basically, but black can't get anywhere there. If they had an extra move, it would be great to get back into that position, but they don't have an extra move. So the winning continuation, this is a 1947 game, by the way, and Keres was black, and Keres played king b5. Now it's worth seeing first of all what happens if white just plays king c3. Well, c4 check, it's just gone. You can see that's just completely gone. Black's easily going to win that. In fact, after king b5, you might be playing king b5 because you're thinking, well, what has white got? This is just winning for black. But white's got this very clever move, a4 check, which a pawn that obviously can't be touched because the d pawn runs. So a4 check, king b6. You might have seen a4 check and decided to avoid it by playing king to b6 immediately. But you wanted to lose a move, if you like. You wanted to make white use one of their reserve tempi. Because now the king comes into c4, and then you've got this a5 move. So white's forced to push the d pawn, same as before, except you haven't been forced to play this h6 move. So we get the same sort of stuff as before. I mean, this threat of a breakthrough, by the way, in the previous position and here, is always good enough to stop white messing about with the a pawn, because the g pawn just runs. It's just faster. Or even if it's, even if it's not faster, you can just use it to take the queen on a8, and you're still going to win this one with your king and win the game. Well, I've got a feeling it is just faster than that anyway. Just glancing at it. So then black's going to do the same plan. White's got to make a run for the king side. Otherwise h5's happening. King f7, king e4 is the only move. Got to stop h5. Black does this king f8 sneaky trick again. I know white could play king e3 and then we've got king e7. I'm just wondering about king f3. Can we play king g7, it reckons here. So king g3. So I'm just sort of looking at the messing around here with the. What happens if we just? We're still going to come back this way. Okay, we're going to sort of transpose into the same sort of position. So king e3, king e7, king e4. Yeah. So sorry, all that messing around I did was irrelevant because white can still take the opposition off you when you come into d6. White can always just meet king d6 or king d4. There was no way of stopping that. But now you can play your reserve tempo, and it's just gone. Before we had this position with black to move, and there's no way to black to make progress, and this time we've got it with white to move, and so white's just dead basically. h5 works in there. This is how the game went, by the way. And then, yeah, white resigned there. Really tough one, that. It all came down to this reserve tempo, and you've got to play king b5 instead of king b6 as your first move. The game follows a similar pattern, and you're not forced to waste this reserve tempo until, because you need it for the crucial moment, which is after all that messing about to get that position set up again. That's the crucial moment. So I should just make a bit clear. I don't think I made it clear enough, actually, that in this position, white's on the 5th rank and black's on the 7th rank. So the reason you had to mess around coming over here with a threat to play h5 is you've got to force, that's it, you've got to force the king back off the 4th rank here, which you do. Okay, with the white, sorry, you've got to force the white king down off the 4th rank. That was the point. It's not about the opposition, it's about making sure your king can get to d6, which it can't do unless you know, at the moment, white king's on the 5th rank, they're not going to let you get to d6. But if you feint to play this, which absolutely has to be dealt with, and then you play this king f8 waiting move, white's got no choice but to step down off the 4th rank. They've got to stay on the E or the F file. So that's the critical point. Apologies for getting sidetracked by the opposition, which wasn't relevant. Right. Now, this position, I'll tell you what, pause the video and decide which side you want to be and whose move you want it to be. How about that? Do you want to be white or do you want to be black? And whose move do you want it to be? So that was enough time to pause the video and decide. If you decided to be black with black to move, then nice one. You've won the game. Oh, you might have just guessed, but good guess. So we've got some mined squares here, and if we step on them, it's then just a case of who wins the battle of the reserve tempi. Now Steinitz's rule is don't move pawns on their starting square because you want to leave the 1 or 2 option open. And a good rule against that is play pawn moves towards your opponent's pawn on their starting position. So I mean this is a trump for black because they can play 1 or 2 later. So white will push. Okay. White's got 2 pawns here on their starting square. This pawn's already wasted its Steinitz rule advantage, if you like. So this is a good pawn for black to push. Just push it. Make one of these two make a decision. So both sides will be wanting to do those sorts of things. So in fact, black's first move is a5. I mean, a couple of choices here for white, thinking about it, but if a4, for example, h6, and you can see that black's won the battle there. But if we just follow the thing I just talked about a minute ago, we'll push the h-pawn towards black's trump card. Black just keeps pushing the a-pawn. You just keep pushing the h. There you go. Black now blocks. I mean, what has white got here? a3 is clearly a disaster. If b3, what could we do against b3? Well, b3, just a3 is absolutely fine, isn't it? That works. And then b4, we can meet with b5. If b4, we can take and meet with b6. There you go. That was the choice, 1 or 2. And we had the choice, but you had the luxury of being able to move 1. So yeah, well done if you decided that in that original position that you were going to be black with black to move. However, if you decided you were going to be white with white to move, also well done. And we get a similar sort of thing. White steps on the mine, that's it. Both kings are mined now. First king to step off the mine gets blown up. They'll be losing their pawn, and it's fairly clear they'll be losing the game from there. So it's whoever wins the battle of the reserve tempi. And white straight away, this is black's trump card, the 1 or 2 possibility. Push your pawn towards it. Take away your opponent's trump. I'm just wondering whether black, instead of playing a4 there, maybe they could play h6, but then we play a4. So not really much to discuss there. So black played a4, white carried on pushing the h-pawn. I'm just also wondering now actually whether black can step off the mine and at least win this. I might explore that in a sec. But b6, white plays b4, takes, b5, b4. Just to finish off actually, let's go and explore black getting themselves an outside pass pawn. I'll just follow the engine. Well, the engine's saying king e6, but I'm going to do my plan and see what the engine does. E5 still winning just. I'll come back to that actually. This is a bit more interesting than you think. In a practical situation, maybe white might play e5 there. King takes h6. Oh yeah, that's gone, isn't it? We can see that's gone. So let's go back to here and play this e5 move. King takes h6, king f5, king g7. This is interesting. Oh, that's why it's just. It's as it worked out. We're going to get in a queen ending, and white's got a slight advantage. Yeah, okay. So white's king's just slightly better placed. I mean, I don't know what it bases this onto, but apparently that's plus 1.7 at depth 21. And what does that even mean? It's like it's either won or it's lost, isn't it? It's just, what's 1.7 mean? That in 21 moves time we're going to be 2 pawns up. I don't know where does it get these numbers from. Anyway, black to play is a win for black. White to play is a win for white. And good fun, hopefully, for you counting out the reserve tempi. And finally, this is a game from 1997. It's white to play. Pause the video and decide what you'll do here. So this one's not actually that hard to think about. I mean, it wasn't an exercise in the Dvoretsky book. It was just a game, and his commentary on it made me laugh. Because I mean, the guy is playing it is it looks like some sort of Eastern European name, and his rating's 2,555. So again, a rating like way higher than I could ever hope to be. So obviously a top player. Plays f4. And Dvoretsky calls this an awful move. It's a white, for no good reason whatsoever, just gives up 2 of his reserve tempi. And so when you see it like that, it's like, well, you kind of have to agree. So f4 was played, king d6, king d3, king d5, king d3, h5. I mean, white sort of messed around a bit more, and king b3. And yeah, black has to be a bit careful here thinking about it. This was an interesting bit of the game, actually. A6 is the winning move. If black just rushes in, this is worth seeing, actually. King d4, if black rushes in at this point. We'll see king b4, a6, a5, takes. And I mean, there's lots of that's just one. Sorry, that's a draw, sorry. Because the white king is back in time. If these pawns were 1 rank further up, then that's a win by that f and h pawn versus an h pawn, that corresponding squares thing that we've talked about lots in other videos. So at this point here, yeah, black has to play a6, which I think he did in the game, and it just continued like this. It's very similar to what we've just seen, except the white king's not going to be in time. So yeah, white just resigned there. But yeah, apparently this f4 is just an awful move, just inexplicably giving away 2 reserve tempi. And the draw is trivial. I mean, I'm looking at the top 5 engine moves, and to be fair to Dvoretsky's comment, all 5 of them are 0.0, including this one, king d3. King c5, king c3, h5, h4, a3, f3. Again, only spending 1 of your 2 reserve tempi and then spending it again. And I think he just says that's sort of an easy draw. And now you look at it, I mean, it is an easy draw. But yeah, he plays f4. I don't know. I think I could sort of learn from that and think, yeah, don't play f4 there. You know, we're in. You can see that having reserve tempi here is going to be a useful thing. Don't spend 2 of them. I mean, it is like it's your trump. Black can't even move a pawn towards it to take away your trump card. This is just 2 moves that you've got. you know, an opportune moment later on, it might be, I can't really see particularly why, but it might be that f3 is useful to stop the black king getting hit in, you know, f3 or f4 are needed later to stop the black king coming into one of those squares. I don't know. I mean, but anyway, f4. An awful move. Right, how long is that? That's that's 50 minutes. So I think we've waffled on about reserve tempi enough. Hope there was at least some useful stuff in there. Sorry for setting up one of those positions with the first move already played, but hopefully we got something from that anyway.